and then come down to this area. And then we'll conclude by talking about our latest projections. So let me start with Texas and 2 years ago. Because 2 years ago, something really big, at least big to us, I mean, probably big to everybody in the country too, happened. On April the 1st, Census Bureau conducted the 2020 decennial census. This is a full population count every 10 years, supposedly of every household, every person in the United States. So that's why I'm saying this is a big thing. So according to that census count, Texas had a population of a little over 29 million, and that's also a 4 million increase from 10 years ago. That's also 16% increase rate, annualized to about 1.6%. To put that into perspective, at the same time, U.S. was half of that growth rate, 7.4%. So, and I also listed other states, as if we care, we do care. So, to give us perspective, our growth rates are only second or third to Utah and Idaho, two much smaller states. So, we're pretty strong, ranked pretty high, ranked first, of course, in terms of numeric change, but third in rate change, growth rates. And then, right around that April 1st, something else big happened. That is, of course, the pandemic, right? And everybody wonder, oh, so what happened to the population growth? Were we strong in growth? And then, so if you look at the number, I probably should have clicked that here. The last two columns, that's 2021, after the pandemic. Texas still growing a little slower at 1.06 annualized, 06% annualized growth rate. Well, it seems slow or slower, but to put that into perspective, at the same time, the U.S. only grew by almost nothing, 0.12%, stagnant there. And to put it in more perspective, 80% of the growth of the nation was in Texas. This is not to say, we gave babies, all the babies were born in Texas, but it's really shuffling around, people moving to Texas. So, okay. So across the states, this is the population of all the states in 2020. One thing that stands out immediately probably to you is that population is not at all evenly distributed across the state. More specifically, you can see if you draw a triangle, the population centers are the three big metropolitan areas. And then if you further draw a line across I-35 corridor, the population resides in those counties on the line, east of the line, account for 87% of the Texas population. So to have that in mind, then look at the change. That was the total population. This is the change map. So apparently, we like each other a lot. People are still moving to those big centers. The triangle area, pretty dark there, red kind of. And then also, you can see some other population centers, maybe at the border, and then like Hidalgo and I cannot see El Paso. So, and then 5 years ago, you may see some population increases, maybe at the Permian Basin. This time, not so much. It's not that red, but because of the last 5 years. So despite all the buzzes about Texas growth, look at the green area. Those are counties that have lost population. 143 counties, that's more than half of the 257 counties in Texas, have lost population in the last 10 years. So, and this is where we are, the two counties, Nueces and San Patricio. So we both experienced growth. So one ad, almost 4,000 people, and the other 13,000 people, almost. look at growth rate again. This time, you probably will see around the population center, you may see, the population center, the outrange, the edge, the suburban areas actually have more growth rate than the center areas if you look at the 3 population centers. And again, these are 2 counties. Both have moderate growth rates during the last 10 years. So to provide more information on these 2 counties, first, New Essex County, I have now 2 decades from 2000 to 2020. So we've been growing continuously during the last 2 decades. And the pie chart shows you the race composition. So you probably will notice that the dark blue is the Hispanic population. So while Texas was no longer a majority state, meaning that none of the race ethnic group is more than 50%. But I think New Essex County or this area, we are still we still have majority race, but that's Hispanic population, not the race the non-Hispanic white, unlike Texas. So, and that trend is actually increasing. We're seeing more Hispanic growth in the last 10 years. And if you look at group quota population, all the group quotas, military, college, all of them have experienced nursing homes, have experienced growth in the last 10 years. And then we move on to, oh, I'm sorry. I think this is San Patricio. I forgot to change the title. So the previous decade experienced some slow growth, but last decade, we have the San Patricio has grown actually at higher rate than New Essex County. Similar patterns in race ethnicity. In San Patricio, we have a lower percentage of Hispanic population. The composition has been increasing. Again, looking at the group quota population at the right-hand side. So orange is the new data. It seems that there are decreases in the correctional facility and also the nursing home facility. So, all right. So let me then talk about the changes. How is it that U.S. didn't see any growth in the pandemic year? How is it that Texas was still experiencing growth there? So let's look at this from a demographer's lens. We usually look at or decompose changes, population changes, into 3 components: migration, birth, and death. So birth minus death, you have natural increase, which is the blue part in my chart. And for migration, you can also separate them into domestic and international. If you compare last decade with last year, you can see that there have been some big changes there. The blue area, the natural increase, have been decreasing, right? The yellow, the orange area, decreased to pretty small. And then domestic migration became the dominant part of population change. So with that in mind, you see that why it's important and how different counties change differently during different period. And that explains to you why for the United States, it didn't grow, right? We barely get any international migration during pandemic year. And now natural increase is going down. So that's why we didn't see any growth. And of course, they don't have anywhere to get information, migration from, right? But Texas gets the most population growth from domestic migration. So zeroing in more in these 2 counties here. So you can see the dark charcoal kind of color is the population change, right? And then the 3 colored bars are the the orange one is the natural change. Yellow one is domestic migration, and blue is international. So I also put them side by side for the different periods, right? Left-hand side U.S. is, if you look at it, we have been driven, our growth has been driven last decade largely by natural increase and somewhat by international migration. We actually had net domestic out-migration last decade. So pandemic year, natural increase goes down, and also international migration goes down. And so actually, according to the Census Bureau estimates, we actually had a little bit of decrease in population in the last year, in between 2020 and 2021. San Patricio County, a little different. So again, the charcoal is the, so notice that the scale is different. So it almost look like there is a big population change, but it's actually not. So San Patricio had population increase and a little bit more in last year. And again, lots of this was driven by natural increase. But in the pandemic year, it actually, a large part of it was driven by domestic migration. So, and so let's dive in deeper on those two components I've talked about, domestic migration and natural increase, right? So look at other places, domestic migration, because that gives you that kind of perspective. Which areas are losing domestic migration? So you can see, again, center cities of those bigger center, they're losing domestic migration. Probably similar here. Corpus Christi, probably losing to surrounding areas, right? So, and where you lose domestic migration, if you cannot make up with international migration, which was down, then you get population decrease, right? So that's kind of the general pattern of the state. And then people wonder, oh, so where do people come from? How can we get more people if we know, where they come from? Maybe we can get more people. This is the state, probably not news to you. Top of the chart is California, is the biggest sending state, and actually all over the country. We did lose some population to some states like Colorado, Oklahoma. I don't know why, but I can see other states, but I actually don't know why. For some of the state, why we did. But that again is net migration. It's not like nobody is moving to California, but this is net. Zero in the two counties, we're here. On the left-hand side, US's. So you can see that people came here from generally not far, mostly from Texas. The top 5 was from Texas: Hidalgo, Cameron County, El Paso, Harris, Aransas County. Almost all nearby or sort of nearby counties. And we lose, Nueces County lost most. Look at the bottom there, to San Patricio. So remember that domestic migration there, where it came from. If you look at San Patricio County, it mainly came from Nueces and Aransas. So, and we did lose population to Orange County, Dallas County, Sedgwick County, Kansas. I don't know, probably has to do with industry, probably Orange County because of the port employment, maybe, I'm just guessing. But, so this is domestic migration. Remember I talked earlier, natural increase. You saw it in the United States. You saw it in these two counties we had. The natural increase has come down tremendously. What has happened? Look at the chart here. This is the birth rates in Texas by race ethnicity. So somewhere around 2008, we began to experience a sharp drop of birth rates. This is not unique to Texas. Actually, Texas is late in this game, if you would. It happened already to lots of other states. We're probably still among the states that have, highest fertility rates. So this is actually a little unexpected because for decades, fertility rates in the United States have been stabilizing around 2.1, which is the perfect replacement rate for population. So this kind came to as a surprise to many demographers in the field. And so let's look at the impact of that, sorry. So this is population pyramid. So each bar, each of these color bar, is the number of people in each age cohort. From bottom, you have the youngest age. Top, you have the older age folks. So left-hand side, 2010. You can see in 2010, we kind of have a pretty healthy pyramid. Each cohort is about the same until you get to higher age population, right? However, when you move on to 2020, and this is a very good visualization to see how each generation moves up of the pyramid, right? I colored them so you kind of know, this is the same cohort. The blue corresponds to the next cohort. How they moved on to an older age, but increased. That's because the in-migration we get, right? But then I want to point out one thing. What I want to point out, there are two things. The bottom, look at the purple generation. You will see that after 2015 especially, each cohort that came in is smaller than the previous cohort. So that's what you saw earlier, the birth rates. That's what happened. And then the second thing I wanted to point out is the yellow part. That generation is the famous baby boomer generation. And which stage of life are they entering into? The retirement age. So we call them baby boomer. They're distinct because it's a bigger cohort than the other cohorts surrounding it or coming up to it. So that will have an impact. If you already have a labor force that's depending on these people and if they're retiring, to think of the impact. So the impact comes from the top and from the bottom. Just want to have that picture in mind when we talk further about this. So natural increase, again, this happens. This is unlike domestic migration. Some get, some positive, some negative. It's across board. Everybody had a decrease in the growth in natural increase. Many counties, 1/3 of the counties in Texas, actually had a natural decrease in the last decade. So, all right. So let me now move on after you look at, so that's how we look at population changes. And then we use those knowledge to do our projections. This is how we do our projections in the future. So we start with population 2020. We always start with the decennial census, the whole age structure, 0 to 95. We add in deaths, projected deaths. We assume a certain kind of death rates. We think death rates will improve or decrease in the future. We add a little bit of trend there. Apply to the base population by age, right? And then we add net migration. I'll come back to talk more about this. And then we add the new 0-year age cohort is from the birth we projected. Again, this is how we project. We think fertility rates will stay low at this level for a while, but probably won't go down drastically in the future. We'll slowly go down still, but not drastically in our new projection. Let me come back to migration. Migration is the component, perhaps, that's most unpredictable. And this is the approach we've taken. So when every census comes out, we take the difference between, for example, 2010 and 2010 census, right? The differences between this, we think, are due to three things. Again, fertility or birth, death, and migration. So we have pretty good record of birth and death, right? So we take them out. The residual is the migration. So that's how we approach the migration or calculate migration in our projections. So in the last three projections we had, 2014, 2018, and 2022. So the first one was based on the migration patterns between 2000 and 2010, 2 decades ago. 2018, we added a scenario. 2010 to 2015, this time we didn't use census. We used Census Bureau estimates to do that. And our latest one, just published last month, you're probably among the first audience to hear me talk about this, just fresh off the oven, was based on, of course, the migration pattern between 2010 and 2020. So, and we did it, sometimes we do several migration scenarios. For example, this time we had 1.0, which is exactly the same migration pattern of last decade, and then half of the migration pattern from last decade. Okay, so probably earlier in the decade, you've heard about Texas population double. You probably heard that saying. That was broadcast by a newspaper and then spread. And that's because of these projections we did based on the migration from 2000 to 2010. So this is our 2014 population projections. So 2015, we revisited our projection. Or say 2018, we revisited our projection, look at 2015 population estimates, and decided migration is down. Population increase was down. So we adjusted our population growth. And and how did we do on the last one? So we compare our projection 2020 to the census 2020. So we over-projected by 1.8%. But later on, when the post-enumeration survey came out from the census, they said that Texas could have had a 1.9% undercount, the biggest undercount number, actually, in the nation. So if you take that into consideration, we actually did very well in our projections at the state level in the 2018. So last month, we looked at the 2020 and revised our projection again. This time, we'll have an even lower projection in the future. We're not going to double. The state is not going to double, though some counties may still. So that's our latest projection. Let's look at the counties we have here. First one, US's. Again, so our first, so the gray line shows the version or vintage 2018 projection, the earlier one, based on 2010 to 2015 migration. Bear that in mind. That's based on 2010 to 2015. The orange line is based on 2010 to 2020, the census. Bear that in mind because I'm going to come back to that point. Why is that? This is a little busy chart, but I try to keep the color the same. Dashed lines were the previous vintage, 2018. Solid lines are this vintage. Green is birth. Birth is down, right, as I said. Deaths, especially starting with the starting point, death is up. Of course, since we don't have since we over-projected our population, so deaths is not as many as we projected, right? Deaths in the future seem to be down, but actually it's because we didn't have a bigger population base. So look at migration, the blue, it's down by quite a lot because we over-projected new ACEs, Census Bureau overestimated new ACEs, at least according to the census, okay? And so San Patricio, again, we overprojected it, not as much as new ACEs. And of course, we adjusted that. Similar patterns here, births down. Death, actually around the same. We didn't do much changes there. We still think after the pandemic, our survival rates will continue to improve in the future. So we didn't do any adjustments there. Migration, we adjusted it down, but not by as much as New Essex County. So that's how we came to our projections this time. And then I said I'm going to come back to the differences between the two scenarios. This looks a little strange, but these are the estimated components of change in the last decade by Census Bureau. This is our estimated. This is not from census. These numbers are not exactly the same. These are not the numbers we use to project. But this gives you an idea why, when we did a projection based on 2010 to 2015, we had a much higher migration rate. Because if you look after 2015, net migration, which is the gray line, was down to negative. Similar pattern for San Patricio, although the timing may be a little different. And of course, in 2020 and 2021, domestic migration came back a little bit in San Patricio. So with that, I'm going to conclude and open to questions. There are more information on our website. This is just to tell you we have some cool maps and cool tools where you can use. So, all right, I'm opening up to questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? Thank you for making that presentation to us. We appreciate it. It gives a lot of good information to take back home and look at. Definitely.
I'd like to see just the coastal county comparison. Is there a dashboard where we can click on all the coastal counties and then see if our domestic migration looks different? For example, I'd be curious to see if you could separate the coastal counties that have industrial bases. There's a reason we have very low domestic migration, and that is what's not being talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Graphs indicate it. Your graphs telling everybody nobody's coming here. They're coming to that I-35 corridor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Save and accept what you might consider natural population growth due to industrial growth, for example, in San Patricio County, where there was higher than estimated movement, but not by much.
Not by much, yeah. And it probably got from new assets, from the people moving, yeah, yeah.
Oasis, where you see a huge decline in domestic migration. Because
I agree, yeah.
coastal communities theoretically should be experiencing positive domestic migration, at least to the extent that would be the average of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And what you see is a complete reversal.
Right, right.
So, I mean, for what it's worth, no one's saying it, but that should
Be looked into.
highly concerned
Mhm.
about our quality of place here, that people are coming to Texas, not choosing a beautiful environment like ours, question why. And that needs to be, you need to look at other coastal communities in order to get apples to apples. Otherwise, it's not fair to look at, for example, Central Texas, 35
Mhm.
corridor. You're gonna have to compare it to, let's say, any of the teal colored up the coast, right?
Yeah,
Talk
you're
about
right, yeah.
Jefferson, Brazoria, Alliston,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That's all the way through. That teal,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and it shows the dichotomy of what's working up the coast where there's still good industry, and what's not working down the coast, with the exception of course, that one orange anomaly
Mm-hmm.
is just huge branches. Okay, so you don't have heavy population. But anyway, there's 20 coastal counties, and it would be great if you could provide that demographic. I think that could help maybe the MTO understand, what we need to do to reverse.
Okay. So what I can do, because we actually don't have a map to where you can click on, but we can put them on the map for you for that, or put in a table for you, either way. So we can certainly do that. Yeah, that's a great idea. In fact, we can maybe even look into more coastal counties outside Texas, Florida, and see what's happening there, because I know that lots of people are moving to Florida, moving to the coastal cities. So, yeah.
And then the final comment is that this is just really for the group. So we now know that the undercount has been estimated at 1.9%. That translates to a dollar figure loss to Texas.
Yeah.
Texas decided not to It's now been quantified, that 1.9% actually has a value. And I was just wondering if the 1.9% has a number. It's a percentage, but it has a value, and then the value can be estimated in federal funding.
I think there was an article before census actually that published. I don't know, remember the exact number, but there is a calculation like if you lose, this or undercount, there's this amount of undercount, how much dollar it translated into. Yeah, of course, the range can be big depending on how you count, what you count into that. But count into, if you count in only the federal funding or all the economic development that could have come from it, things like that. So there is, if you're interested, again, I'll take notes later, and we can send that to you, how much that translates into dollar amount. And the other thing is, I want to say this 1.9% is a survey, came from a survey. This is, let me say, a chance or a probability of 1.9%. It's not a definite, so it came from a survey. But there are signs, and we do believe there's a undercount, because we also show an undercount of, I actually have that toward the end. I didn't say that, but undercount of the Hispanic population, which has historically been undercounted, right? So, and since we are having a big Hispanic population growth in that, that also test to it. We might have an undercount of our population in Texas. So I also want to add of the group quarter population. We are actually now analyzing group quarter population based on the data we collect from state agencies, college dorms, prisons, nursing homes. We're doing that diligently because there is a program, this is new, this census, called, this is new. It's equivalent to a CQR, where you can challenge the counts, but on group quarter. It used to be you can only challenge household count, but this time you can challenge group quarter counts too. We're going to do our own analysis and try to see whether there likely might be an undercount of group quarter population. We were thinking, if we have time, if it concerns to any of the cities, if it happens, or we suspect it's for any of the cities or counties, we'll probably reach out to you, because it's usually the highest elected official that can submit that challenge, And also, if you have data, I would encourage you to do that regular CQR, census count challenge, or maybe it's another name. Anyway, to challenge the count, if you have data, if you suspect that there's an undercount here, you can contact us. Let us know what data you have. We can help you navigate and try to submit that challenge. So far, I think there are probably 2 counties, 2 submissions, only 2 from Texas. One is from Austin, city of Austin. The other, I forgot, probably is another county. We have a person who is in charge of this, try to coordinate and help counties and cities to see if we can challenge that count. So if you want to do that, contact us. We can help. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I just got one real
Here.
quick. Dr. Yu, is there a place that we can go? I was looking at your general population pyramid. Is there a place that combines that with the migration and that age group where I'm going with this is looking at current labor force and then generational labor force coming up? Is there a place that combines that pyramid with those 2 statistics?
So you mean let me try to understand. So the population pyramid by age, and then
Yes,
how
ma'am.
much that is due to the migration or out or
Yeah,
net
I
immigration?
guess the migration age groups.
The simple answer is no.
Okay.
The more complicated answer is we can possibly maybe try to, because that's a great idea, you want to see who's migrating in your counties or places. In general, of course, we know it's the young workers, people who have just started the career that move are more likely to move. But it can be very area specific. We actually have we can at least provide state migration rate by age. That's something we already have. I'm not sure I can combine that with the pyramid, but I'm pretty sure I already have it. We use it for projections. I have it and can provide that with you. I just need to look at whether we have it for certain counties because that, when you go down to granular statistics, they can be unstable,
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Yep.
so I can see if I can combine like several counties and see if I can give you a more stable kind of shape of how migrants look like, kind of
Or
thing.
just like our MPO here. Yeah, a couple
Okay.
of counties maybe.
I'll take a look and see if I
And
can.
it's basically to go back to look at what the future workforce looks like. Are we?
Yeah, that's
because
very
what
important.
you're saying is we're shrinking
Yeah.
by birth and death.
Sure,
right?
exactly. And the state is the same way. I didn't have time to put in more slides, but when I go out, the biggest message we're giving to people is if you look at labor force participation rate, the general rate has come down a little bit in Texas. But if you go further to look at every age group, 5 age group, every group, the rate actually has increased. It's not like people, I'm not talking about COVID, but in general, in the last 10 years, every age group participation rate has been going up, especially the older age. It has increased the most. However, because of your age composition, because of that big retirement group, the overall labor force has come down. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other, Ms. Squire? Mayor?
How do you determine the international migration statistic? What
Okay.
goes into that analysis?
Okay, so you probably noticed that in our projection, we didn't distinguish them because we don't have a source for it. For Census Bureau, it can come from several sources. One, mostly actually from American Community Survey, where they ask people where they lived last year. That's one thing. The other thing, they do get data from national security. What's the word? Land Security Bureau. They have statistics there. They mainly use ACS to distribute age, all this race kind of thing, but they have a general idea from the administrative record to see the international migrants. And also, they also look at airline capacity or flight numbers but they don't work that into the model. They don't only look at them to see if they have got the level right. Yeah.
So the international could include anybody that reported that might be here illegally too.
Yes, it could. Exactly. That's exactly the case. Although, I think that's a very good point. Although, you can imagine that they're less likely to respond to the
That's correct,
surveys,
yeah.
right? So I wouldn't be surprised if there's an undercount in ACS in surveys of the undocumented migrants. However, census is a little different. Census is supposed to have fuller coverage because census counts households or housing units. As long as you have a structure there, there's people living there, as long as the housing structure is in their database, then it's counted. The population, if they cannot get you to answer in that housing unit, they try to impute. They try to find another similar household in the same area to say, oh, I think there are maybe 7 people or 5 people in this household. But again, I know that there potentially can be an undercount if you have people hiding, in the house and have more people than usual in one housing unit. So.
Any other comments or questions? Well, Dr. Yu, thank you very much for coming and giving us that good information. We appreciate you. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on into item 5, which are our action review and discussion items. First of all, we got 5A is the TxDOT 2022 Unified Transportation Program, Category 2, and 4U project nomination. Mr. McDonald?
Sure. I'll take this item, but before we get into this, your next item is really going to continue our discussion on demographics, and so don't forget what you just heard and your question. So Craig will bring that back to that next item. But this item that is before you now is pretty important in the way of funding for projects. It's on the range of, I have to check my math. It's on the range of $300 million that, if you agree with staff in your technical advisory committee, it'll be forwarded to the TxDOT UTP process tomorrow. And so it seems like it's a last minute. And so in your packet, you can see the schedule that this is not the last time you'll get to see this list. The next major phase of this comes when we start talking resource allocation. Again, so what TxDOT does, what we do as an MPO, along with our transit partner at the RTA, we come up with how much money we think we're going to have in all the funding categories. In your packet, we gave you the 1 through 12 funding categories as a reminder. I'm not going to cover those. But the schedule, the important date is tomorrow to start. And again, the 2024 UTP process is a TxDOT process. It'll end next August when they approve the list of projects. And in your packet, you can see the 2023 version of the 10 years of projects to be funded. It's interesting, if you look at the difference in the numbers, it's about $57 million different between the 2023 list of projects and the 2024 list of 10 years of projects. No surprise to all of you, we talked to you a lot in the technical committee a lot, and anyone who bids a project out knows costs are coming in higher and a lot higher. And so TxDOT, the MPO, transit, statewide, we're all going to be looking at the numbers. What's the revenue that we're going to be expecting, but also what are the cost estimates for all these projects? And so this is the first shot of that almost year-long process for this 10 years, about $300 million. We don't know if there's $300 million to fund all these projects. We know there's cost overruns, and they're listed, and TxDOT, the district, Valente and his staff have done a great job putting this together. It's come through your technical committee. We as MPO staff agree that our recommendation jointly is to submit this as is to the TxDOT process, and that is literally tomorrow. With that, be happy to answer any questions. One of the things on page 2 of the cover memo, we repeated the 10-year funding estimate from the last time. Normally, when you don't have inflation and huge cost increases of projects, you add a year, and you add, in the case statewide, it's about $8 billion you would add to fund projects. There may be a case that the new money that comes in, again, I won't speak for TxDOT, but we look at the possibility exists that the new money that comes in statewide may go to help offset cost increases over the first 9 years of that 10-year time period, because we don't think construction costs are coming down anytime soon. And so we need to weigh that when we come back to you all with the financial plan for the 10 years, but also when we get into our 25-year plan and our 4-year plan, which is that TIP, that Transportation Improvement Program. So it's lurking behind, and we've talked about it over the last year. So this, again, is the starting point of the list. I can't tell you how far down the list we're going to make funding-wise, but as soon as we know, we'll bring it back to you through the technical committee, through TxDOT, and come back to you with probably a revised recommendation on this list. And again, you may have 2 or 3 shots of this, but today is just, we agree with your technical committee that this is the list that should go forward in the process.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the draft 2024 project list for UTP process.
Okay, got a motion by Chairman Zahn. Do I have a second?
I have a comment just on
Hey,
one
I'll second.
item.
Okay, let's line
Because we're looking at the 23.
Mayor.
Right. We're looking at this one. Okay, so our item on, what is it? I can't even see. On the Northwest Boulevard?
Yes.
I would just, for the record, I want to state and really, I guess, amend it so that it's on record that we modify the project just to make absolute certain that we're going to include bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure.
Okay, so on the
Because
list-
that's consistent with our adopted plan, right?
Sure. Yeah, and this was a discussion at the Technical Advisory Committee. The scope for this project, it's on the 2024 UTP list, right above the yellow shaded projects, which is the Gregory interchange, is the Farm to Market 624 Northwest Boulevard. That's the line item, Mayor, that you're talking about?
Yes, yes.
And so there's a project description in there, and I know TxDOT's aware, as MPO staff and our technical committee, the scopes are not aligned yet. And so I think what you're asking is that the scope that City of Corpus Christi has for that corridor
Right.
be worked with TxDOT, because they have a scope for this amount of money. There's a corridor study that the city has done, so those two need to be integrated.
Exactly. That's right. So it aligns with our plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from staff perspective, and Valente can talk from the district, but from staff, we know this project list is coming back. We have to reconcile with the cost increases, even for that project. And then if there's additional costs needed for that project, that'll be an offline discussion between city staff, MPO staff, and TxDOT staff to figure out what, if anything, gets added to that and when. Because the two scopes exist. There's a little bit differences that
Right.
everyone recognizes. We just need to figure out what's the final scope of that project. And so as it stands now, that's the cost estimate for the TxDOT scoped out project, knowing that there's a discussion to follow. And so, as I said, there'll be another list, another cost estimate, and conceivably the project description can change.
Or not.
Or not. That's a different decision. Again, it's dependent on timing of what increase in scope would be, but also how to afford what that is. So if you do a give and take
Right.
and hold the cost estimate the same, what are you taking out? So again, there's a future discussion on that project that needs to be had. But today, your action today is just getting it in under the schedule so it can be in the process.
Right.
You don't want to miss deadline of, if there isn't anything, then there's not much to talk about.
Right. No, that's understood. And I'm all for the list going through, as you just mentioned, to make certain that it goes through. But I guess, as you said as well, the discussion on, obviously, all of this is not going to be more than likely included. Right. And so that's, that's, obviously, everybody wants, all of the projects included, but to move it forward, to make certain that it's on the list, I'm fine with that. But we'll have that conversation, I guess, as we move forward then, in terms of.
We will continue to have that discussion on probably a few of these projects. I think I'll note the other one on the bottom of the list, Park Road 22.
Right.
It was on the last year list. Yeah. This year, it doesn't have a has an older funding estimate, but that scope needs to be worked on between TxDOT, city staff, MPO staff. So it's not defined, not finalized, but it's still on this list, even though it's not funded. Again, we're not drawing the funding line just yet. That's a couple months away. I think the schedule calls for February or March. We're going to get the revenue estimates collectively together. And again, this is a statewide discussion, so you can imagine a lot of moving parts. And if you add anything from the legislative session, if there's new money that comes out of that sprinkles into the list of projects that get funded, depending on what, if anything, the legislature may do. So we know the funding line is uncertain, but for now, this is a list of projects that can move forward, get refined on the way, and eventually by next August be finalized. So a lot of time left. And so I want to make sure everyone understands this is not the last time you'll see this. There'll be a lot of conversations around all these projects. Because it's about $300 million, and it's the next 10 years of projects.
Okay.
Okay, Mayor Squirrel.
So just to clarify, if the scope of the project changes, can the category of funding also be changed? In other words, if we add a category 9 to that project, can that I'm asking the question now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think for the MPO process, again, this is a TxDOT process.
Right.
We bring this into our process to do
Okay.
the 4-year, 10-year, and 25-year
Okay.
plans. We also bring in, and the funding categories in the appendix, you see are categories 1 through 12.
Yeah.
We really focus on category 2, category 4, category 7,
Right.
and category 9.
Right.
Category 9 are most of the trail and related type projects. Category 7 are your most flexible dollars. We're looking at estimates of all those categories of funding. Once you have a prioritized list of projects in our 4 or 10-year list, you can mix and match funding.
Okay.
So it's not, you have to use one category or not. So for Northwest Boulevard, you can use category 2, 4, 7, and 9 potentially. We haven't got that far yet. We're just trying to come up with the list of priorities, get into the tech stop process, then define scope changes, who's going to do what with the projects, and then apply the money to it, which is going to happen over the next year or less.
Okay, any other discussion? Because I got a motion in a second.
I'll just add, Mayor Scaro and Mayor Guajardo. So this was just really the latest estimate placeholder to our current estimate or current scope that we have, like for the 624. That this doesn't mean discussions end on any type of work that we have that the city wants to add to this. But it also means, like Robert mentioned, if there is additional changes, we need to look at whether there's a scope decrease on what we already estimate or a funding increase on one of the categories. And we can look at alternate categories as well. So to Mayor Scaro, timing is the only thing that matters when we're looking at adding a different category of funding when you're going through the process as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, 5B, Corpus Christi MPO Small Area Forecast Task Force. Mr. Casper.
Good afternoon. The purpose of this item is to request the formation of the Small Area Forecast Task Force. While I do have a crystal ball on my desk, the rest of the MPO team thinks we'd be better served by having local experts help us with how to allocate our forecast. And we call it the Forecast Task Force, but it's actually an allocation committee. It will take the forecast that has been done probably by the state demographer and allocate those jobs and households around the region. So we've created a list. It includes the TAC members, and then what we think is a pretty complete list of other stakeholders that could provide information that would be vital to creating as good of a set of forecasts, a set of scenarios as possible. As I mentioned before, if you only do one forecast, the only thing you can be 100% sure of is it's wrong. So what we're going to do is create a couple of scenarios, at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 scenarios that allocate the forecast out to try to bracket in what the future looks like and use that spectrum to determine what projects are the most efficient and least risky investments, because we don't want to do a project that is only useful in a certain scenario when we have needs that could be covered by several different forecasts. So, and looking at the forecast, it's going to be also important to involve as many people as possible because there are more approved developments now than we have population and jobs coming. So it's not everybody. Everybody's going to be unhappy. It's just a matter of degree of unhappiness about growth in the region. And so we'd like to have as much input into that as possible. So we're asking you to approve formation of the task force with this as the initial list of participants.
So moved.
I got a motion by Commissioner Zahn. Do I have a second? Second. Got a seconded by Mayor Guajardo. Any other discussion, questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, 5C is a resolution to enter into a non-construction AFA with TxDOT for $2 million of the STBG program funds. Mr. McDonald?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item may look familiar to you. You remember last year, because of some of the COVID relief money, the MPO was able to access $2 million of 100% federal funds, which are our favorite kind of federal funds. No matching, and you just have to do a few things, and you've done most of the action. In our work program, you've added the $2 million in scope of services, which is also attached in your packet. You also put in your 4-year transportation improvement program. Not only this 4-year plan, but the last 4-year tip, to make sure that if we straddle the federal fiscal year, which we have, that the scope, this project can move forward. So the phase of this project we're in is completing the TxDOT AFA, or to non-construction AFA process. We've been at it about 4 months at the moment, and so we're ironing out the details with them so we can access the dollars. The dollars are there. We just need to pull them down. To pull them down, we need all the paperwork in the right order. And so what you have in your packet, you can see the 17-page attachment to the AFA, or the non-construction AFA. The additional piece that they asked for and what's on your agenda is the resolution that you need to consider, and if you agree with staff that you approve this resolution, we'll get that into the process. So it would be one less thing to complete so we can access the $2 million and then move forward with the other plans that we keep talking about, right? We're doing the small area forecast we talk about, hiring consultants to help with that. We're doing the non-motorized plan. We're doing all the different things, a safety plan. So on down the list, you can see the first attachment is kind of a spreadsheet summary of it. That's probably the easiest one to read. So with the resolution, we can get the money, and you've approved our consultant teams last year. They're ready to go. We've got scopes. We're ready to move out on all these sub-plans for your next 25-year plan. We call it the 2050 MTP. That's why no surprise that the forecasting goes out to 2050. We need to know what our population employment is at 2050, drive what's the transportation need, and then go fund all those needs that we can and come up with all those needs that we keep hearing. More and more needs are coming out from the local governments to say we have more needs from safety, capacity, and across the board. So to get our consultants going, this resolution will, we hope, be the last lever to push with TxDOT in Austin, and we'll move forward. So we ask for your approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve Resolution 23-02.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Mr. Landaker, seconded by Mayor Scurro. Any questions, comments on the motion, resolution and the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, that concludes our action items. We'll go ahead into information items. First of all, 6A is a Harbor Bridge update. Mr. Oliveris, you got any update, or just?
Yes, well, real quick, just to let the group know where we're at right now. I know the last time we spoke, we had just resolved one of what we call the big 5 items on the bridge that was keeping us from continuing work on the tower, which was a delta frame. They started recasting delta frames at the precast yard, and we are currently working on a number of other items for resolution, but focusing on the next 3 items that would allow us to start working on the towers again. So it's been prioritized as far as the top 5 items go. So 2, 3, and 4 deal with the foundation and the construction sequencing, and those are pretty close to getting to a point where we can call them resolved. So I can't say we're there yet, but the goal was to get those by mid-December, which was the original plan that Flatiron Dragados has, and it looks like we're on track to be able to fulfill that. So as soon as that is done, we'll come out and we'll let everybody know that that if they have been resolved and when work will resume on the towers again. So I think you heard me last month mention that they're going to start mobilizing equipment. So they've started that already, and hopefully equipment will be mobilized and ready to go once we have resolution on the next 3 items that will allow us to work on the towers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, 6B, Corpus Christi MPO Regional Coordination Group for Federal Transportation Grants. Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, not a lot of new news. Federal government has not announced awards of other programs. We thought there might have been one or two from your last meeting. So again, 23 categories. We gave you the links to all those categories. We check with your technical staff. We look around for other local entities that may be applying for these funds. We know there's some thoughts going on, but nothing has been applied for. And we still have not received those big billion-dollar grants yet, or hundreds of millions. So I think you all keep trying. Your staffs will be looking at it, and we'll report anything that comes along.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, includes the information items we have. Go on to member agency. Any information from statements from the committee? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead. Upcoming events. Our next transportation policy regular meeting will be January the 5th of 2023. Hard to say that, but that's when it's going to be. So 22 went by fast, so we'll get ready for it. Okay. Anybody have anything else? If not, get a motion to adjourn. Got a motion by Mayor Scarrow to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Oliveris. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 3:04 p.m.
Happy holidays, everybody. If I don't see
Yep.
you again.
Yeah, it's kind of early. I was going to do that, but